with us before, this is an opportunity for you to come before the board, stand at the podium on my right, give us your name and address. You may speak at this time to any item that is on the agenda. Items not on the agenda will be at a time later on in the program. So does anyone want to speak to any item that's on the agenda at this time? If you do, just be recognized and come forward. So well-behaved group tonight. Seeing none wanting to be recognized, we'll move along to the next item. Number 7, informative briefing on lowering our insurance rate by Dr. Spencer Rogers from the North Carolina Sea Grant. Those of us who have been around a long time and living along the coast and in the bureaucracy of the state and local governments appreciate all the work Dr. Rogers has done through the years. And I'm scared to quote how many years it is, but I know the first digit's either a high 2 or a 3. But we do appreciate all your hard work and look forward to your words of wisdom tonight, Dr. Rogers.
33.
33.
And just for the record, I can't claim the PhD, but anybody's welcome to call me Master Rogers.
Mr. Rogers.
If you all will excuse me tonight, this is actually a little unusual. It's my 3rd presentation today, and I started with allergies in my vocal cords. So far, so good. So let's see if I can get through this one too. For those of you that may not be familiar with the Sea Grant program, we're the web equivalent of the Land Grant College program and the Cooperative Extension program. And Congress thought that they were doing such a good job for farmers, they needed something to do similar for fishermen, so they invented Sea Grant about 50 years ago. And most of our people work in fisheries and seafood. If you want to catch it, cook it, process it, market it, eat it, we've got somebody working on it and can help you do that. But we have a number of other specialists in related fields now, including water quality, coastal planning and law, and my work is in specializing in hurricane-resistant building construction, shoreline erosion, marine construction, docks, piers, and marinas, and coastal management issues. I'm also a member of the Coastal Resources Advisory Council for something over 20 years. But I'm here to talk tonight about something good that's taken a long time to get done, but is now about to come to reality here in North Carolina. It's been obvious to me that we needed some incentives to build better houses and maintain better houses in North Carolina, but historically the insurance industry has been very reluctant to get involved in those. But in part with the help from me and a lot of other interested people, the 2009 legislature directed the rate bureau in North Carolina to address incentives for wind-resistant construction. And I'm here to report out some of the things that they've adopted. Some are going to work pretty well, others we're going to have to wait and see. But the good news is it may save you some money on your wind insurance policies. So if I can have the next slide, please. Who's going to qualify is the first question, and the answer is that just about everybody in the end. And the initial regulations are most clear for the beach and fair plans. That's the North Carolina wind pool. If you're dropped by your private insurance coverage for wind and hail coverage, then you fall back to the beach and fair plans, and they are definitely required by the ordinances to implement these incentives that we'll discuss later. And that's going to take effect on May 1st of 2001, coming up the end of this month. So it's right around the corner. The first time you can get that is on your first policy renewal. So you can't apply for it May 1st. It's whenever your policy comes up for renewal. And what we've learned since this program was put together for a meeting a couple of weeks ago is that all of the private companies are going to have to do the same thing. They're going to have to offer the same incentives that will be the numbers that you see tonight. It is not a voluntary choice by company. They are now required to do that by the rate bureau. The next slide. Okay, if you'll notice the areas that are spinning, the coastal counties, there are 2 insurance zones on the barrier islands, north and south, and there are 2 or 3, depending on the maps that they use, secondary mainland counties that are the red and the green in this particular picture. In those areas, the incentives will be available at varying rates depending on the zone. The next slide. That's all of Brunswick County and all of Holden Beach. Now, there are two ways to qualify for these credits. There's a system that's been set up by definition by the Department of Insurance and the Rate Bureau. And there's a second system that's been set up by an industry trade group that's been adopted by the Department of Insurance. And that's called the Institute for Business and Home Safety. They're housed out of Tampa, Florida. They're an independent of individual companies, but they're still a trade group, but a relatively independent trade group compared to some groups that are highly promoting of their industry. These guys are actually taking a close look at hurricane and storm-resistant construction and coming up with some good products to evaluate how good or how bad they are. And the name of the program that they administer is called Fortified Homes Program. Next slide. The Department of Insurance credits don't require any inspections other than some proof that you actually have taken these actions or have these on your house. And there are two different features. One is a hip roof. A hip roof is one that slants towards the peak in all four sides. So there's no flat gable end on the roof anywhere. In the purest sense, that's a pretty easy definition to define. In reality, when it gets down to practice, particularly in beach houses, it gets a little more complicated to define what qualifies and what doesn't. The second feature is opening protection, and that could be either hurricane-resistant shutters or impact-resistant windows and doors, or all the glazing has to be impact-resistant. In addition, the way the rules are written right now, it has to be pressure rated as well. So if you put shutters on an old window, not only does the shutter have to be certified as meeting the national standards, the wind pressure requirements on the windows underneath it have to meet the national standards as well. And there's a higher discount if you do both of those. Well, it's not entirely clear what it's going to take to qualify for these discounts, but it's not an inspection. You should be able to submit alternative information. In the case of a hip roof, probably just a picture of the roof. In the case of the debris protection and window protection, it may take things like a statement from the contractor, an inspection of the decals on your windows and doors. A variety of things might make that feasible without a formal inspection of the building. And right now we don't know how that's going to work because the insurance companies haven't been given all the details of how to do it. So we're working now on a number of training programs. Someone else is doing the insurance agents, and I can't tell you where that stands, but they are working on it. When it gets done, I don't know, but that should help clarify. Now, how much can you save? The devil is in the fine print, right? So let's look at some bigger numbers in the next slide. Yeah, it's a little easier. Okay, if you have a hip roof, we're looking at the southern beaches, which is the second row from the top. So if you have a hip roof, you can get 6.8% reduced from your wind and hail coverage. And if you have window protection, you can get as much as 7%. If you have both, you can get up to about 14.8%. Now, that's what a private insurance company can offer you if you still have private coverage. Most of the beach communities, everybody's been dumped already, so they're in the beach and fair plan. And if you're in that, because of the other laws that authorize the beach and fair plan, there's a reduction in these amounts of 5 to 15%. That's the premium you pay above the regulated rates anyway to be in the beach and fair plan. So it'll be a little bit different table and a little bit less of a discount than you see in this table. Next slide. Next. Those are just some of the numbers I've already repeated. Okay, the Institute for Business and Home Safety Fortified Buildings is a little different. First of all, it's going to require inspection by a trained building evaluator. And right now we're in the process of training evaluators to work in the state. 2 months ago there were none. This month there are 7, and we're training later in the month up in the Warren City area to increase the number of of trained evaluators. But the way this one works, there are 3 levels of building resistance for hurricane winds that you can qualify for in existing buildings. So they're labeled bronze, silver, and gold levels. In order to get the silver and gold, you have to meet the bronze level. So you start at the bottom. If you qualify for that, you may go to the silver level. If you qualify for that, you may go to the gold. And then there's a separate standard for fortified buildings for new construction. That's basically a building code plus design requirement that you have to have designed and inspected in advance if you're considering a new building. And that has the highest level of discounts, and there are actually some of those buildings already in North Carolina that I'll describe later. At the first level, the fortified bronze, there are 2 ways to qualify this. One's going to work and one's probably not. And option 1 that you'll see in the later tables is when you're not re-roofing. And you can do some of these things from inside the attic that will be an improvement, but it's not as reliable and will be far more expensive and difficult to do than if you're re-roofing. So for most of you, these options are going to be a good option if you're planning to re-roof anytime soon. And even if you don't get this credit and don't do the inspections, then what is described in this bronze level for when re-roofing is a very good idea for anybody, anywhere, and it's not particularly expensive to install if you are re-roofing. The next slide. The things that it's going to require is extra roof deck nailing. That's the plywood sheets on your roof above the building standards. There are studies out now that show some extra nails are a very easy and important improvement. Handful of nails are pretty cheap if the roof is off anyway and exposed. There's something called secondary water protection that I'll show you some pictures of later. But basically, it's a sticky back tape that goes over either every seam in the roof deck between the plywood sheets, or it's a 3-foot wide sheet that covers the entire roof and replaces the felt paper and nailing that you would otherwise normally use. And the purpose of that is that if you lose all your shingles, that this secondary water protection is expected to stay stuck to your roof deck, and you'll have something other than a gap of 1/4 inch or 1/8 of an inch at every sheet of plywood in the roof. So it should significantly reduce the water damage should you have shingle damage later or any roofing damage. There's a requirement for high wind shingles. Those are in standard use now, and new buildings are probably using them anyway. There's a requirement to look at the roof end attachments and the ceiling at the gable end vents. And in some cases, if you have a gable roof, that's the kind with an A-frame flat wall on the outside, those are particularly vulnerable to some types of damage, and there's some ways that you can readily reinforce those without spending much money. It makes a significant difference in their wind resistance. We'll take a look at some pictures of some of those. Roof deck nailing, this is from Caswell Beach back in one of Hurricane Diana, I believe. There just weren't enough nails in that roof deck, and it came up. The way to fix that is just add some nails. Next slide. These are 2 examples of secondary water protection. If you look at the slide on the left, the seams have been taped, and the rest of the roof is treated like a normal roof installation, whatever material you happen to be using. The right-hand side picture is 100% coverage of that same type of material. It's a self-sealing material, so when you put a nail around it, it seals around the nails. So even the nail holes aren't leak sources once that membrane goes in. Next slide. Gable ends have proven to be a particular problem in high wind storms. This is from Hurricane Andrew down in the Miami area. The gable end has flipped off of the roof and is now lying facing downward against the wall of the exterior of the building. And the reason for that was a poor connection between the roof deck and the rafters and that gable end. So there are ways that you can add a few 2x4s, some extra screws, and make that much stronger than it would be otherwise. And that's probably better and stronger than the code that's in place now in North Carolina.